Chapter 68. Love and Longing. Remember, they won't work again. You've made a scene and your tricks are being studied. The whole galaxy is watching. Miro Noir reminds him as the last fight of the second round finishes. The winner was a towering Apuk warrior with her shell and clothing painted with fire decals. She had broken more than a few limbs to render her opponent still before shattering their shells between her fingers. The crowd had roared in appreciation, and the wounded had been carried off the field. So heavy injuries are allowed. Your own and mine had been so bloodless by comparison. It's a matter of debate among warriors. I'm of the opinion that wounding your opponent when you're meant to attack their armor above all else is shameful. Others see it as simply practical and go for the knees. She explains and he grins. So the easy part is over. Good. Don't get overconfident. Hubris is the greatest foe of any fighter. True enough. I am testing myself, though. I'll stick to my plans unless I'm in serious trouble. And if you're to win this round, what's your plan for the next 3? She asks, and he leans in to whisper in her ear. So, next round is a true test. After that, you're going to be quite baffling, followed by showing exactly how much of a sorcerer you are. That's about the size of it. There's a lot to consider, much to learn from, and at the end, a prize. Although I've already won a fairly major one. Oh? She asks with an eyebrow up. I'm taking part in my beloved's culture and ways. I probably won't really take a crown. There's no doubt some surprise that will drop me. Then it's just a grab and a tear and I'm out of the competition. Oh? Now she's even more intrigued. This is just my silly little way of having a bit more in common with you. That and improve myself, test myself, show that I'm worthy of... He's cut off by Miro Noir gently kissing him and breaking it off to let her forehead rest against him. Don't you worry. Don't you worry about that at all. She whispered to him, and there's a chime signaling the next match. Come back to me in one piece. I will, he says, giving her a slight kiss on the lips and standing upright. He walks out to the arena and takes stock of his opponents. Green dresses here, as well as a powerfully built Amazon in dark purple pants and crop top, in addition to her blue spiny shell. Another Amazon in a jet black dress with a small green shell. The last 2 Amazons are glaring at each other when they're not glaring at him, as they're wearing the same thing, a bright pink tube top and jogging shorts with large black shells. So why am I the only one with footwear? He asks, and hears his question magnified. He then slaps his forehead. The directional microphone was pointed right at him. There's some laughter at both his visible frustration and the question as well. It's a legitimate question. It's a sign of confidence from those that are wearing the more elaborate outfits. You're covered from your elbows out and your neck down, fairly elaborate. Goyitis explains, and he lets out a hum. Oh, I'm in a combat uniform. Short of walking in with weapons, this is how humans go to straight-out war. He explains with a shrug. Ah, so he's taking this more seriously than expected. Good to know. Now, does anyone have anything to say? Goyitis asks, and there is silence as the girls simply take some stances and Goyitis begins counting down. Vernon focuses and sees that all of his opponents are pulling on the local axiom to buoy themselves up in ways that his previous opponents weren't. Hey Tret, the girl in green announces, and the axiom twists around her in a very familiar pattern. He rips at the axiom as the world loses its color and she smirks as she walks up to him. He feigns stillness and she scoffs. Big Purple rushes up behind Green Dress, and she turns just in time to see what's happening. Vernon slams his palms together to shatter the large axiom construct. There's another rush of temporal shenanigans, and he brings the power in. Black Dress is rushing up while trying to avoid shattering the sound barrier, and everyone, Vernon included, turn to regard her. She gives a sweeping punch towards Purple, who dodges it, even as she boots Green Dress back, who turns it into a renewed charge on Vernon, who weaves to the side and dives between Black Dress and Purple before ducking under the brawling two in Pink. Then the acceleration stops as someone screws it up, and a concussive wave of the shattered sound barrier knocks everyone back as it hits like being thrown through a plate glass window. "I think we've all had our fill of fun with time abilities, thank you," Vernon remarks. "You brought them in. And we've all proven we can at least counter if not use them, so let's test ourselves another way." He replies before rushing forward. Energy starts crackling around his hands as he preps the axiom to... A blast of fire cuts off his charge and he rolls to the side to dodge it before catching the reversed heel kick of one of the two Pinks. They've taken an interest in pounding the sense out of each other, but clearly still have presence of mind enough to ward him off somewhat. He grips the heel and pulls, throwing the woman off balance but being unable to capitalize on it as Green decides that she wants him out of the tournament. He dodges two of Green's punches before blocking one with his elbow, using the slight break in the rhythm she was starting to punch her in the face. The flinch is enough for him to get his feet up, and with a channeling of axiom, he launches her halfway over the field. He twists as he hits the ground and rises with his left hand on his armor, and his right channeling an enormous pool of axiom to convert the floor of the arena in both material and shape. A sword of Apuk design rises with him, and he gives it a spin before taking a defensive stance. Green skids to a stop before hurting herself and begins pacing warily. The blade is considerably smaller than most Apuk Wars words, but that's semantics when using one of these barbed monsters on anything smaller than a whale. "You really don't know how to fight fair, do you?" she asks in disgust, and he chuckles. "No such thing as a fair fight. Besides, we're being watched. Go Yeetus still has the microphone. If this was against the rules, she would have said something already." He says, and she charges. A swing from the blade is ducked under, and he receives a brutal punch to the gut. If he didn't have a huge amount of axiom running through him, then that would have straight up killed him. As it is, a few coins are clearly cracked by the attack. He can't afford many more mistakes, if any. On her next charge, he throws the sword at her and she catches it with a startled look. The pause is just enough for him to grab her wrists and drive a knee into her stomach before making a fast grab for her shell. His hand crackles with power, but she recovers fast enough to tear away, leaving him with only a small handful of mangled metal and a sword dropped at his feet. He kicks up the sword and thinks quickly before grinning. She charges and he matches the charge himself. He turns the blade and catches her punch on the flat and uses that to lever it around and slam the side of her head with the guard. She staggers away and he follows it up with a cut that she dodges. A downwards chop that transitions to a stab has her backing up repeatedly to get away from the tri-type blade. It's bought him a few moments and the rest of the combatants are stuck in their own little duels. He needs to win his and pounce on the others fast. Otherwise, someone else might do the same. Then she catches the sword and it turns into a contest of brute strength. One he slowly begins to lose as she's had her whole life to truly master physical enhancement where he's been monkeying around for only a few weeks at best. New and barely tried solutions rarely stack up well against the tried and true in their own field. So he has to change the game. He channels axiom through his legs and into the arena floor again. He shifts it under her and breaks her stance, giving him time enough to quickly force the sword to the side and give the girl the most vicious headbutt he can. She staggers back on the shifting ground and he takes his chance and he launches himself beside her as he sends a massive rumble through the arena, throwing everyone else off balance for another heartbeat. Time to get behind her so there's nothing between him and his target. His axiom-empowered swing with an axiom-resistant weapon cleaves clean into her shell, slicing it first before getting stuck halfway through. A twist and the armor breaks in half. Green falls to her knees in shock as she feels herself lose, too stunned at the turnaround to turn around. "You almost had me. Well done," he says, passing by her. No need to be unsporting. Every single hair on the back of his neck sticks straight up and he dives to the side to avoid a brutal blue fireball. "Hey, watch it!" he shouts, infuriated that they nearly hit the girl in green. She's already out of the competition, she doesn't need more shit. He runs Axiom over the resisting metal of his sword and it simply slides off. There's a trick. At the next gout of blue fire, he charges sword first, the Axiom. He runs up, the metal flies off it so quickly that it drags the fire with it and leaves him safe in a parting wake. The purple-wearing Apuk flinches back as he nearly feeds her his sword point first. Then he kicks her in the knees as he shakes the arena again. Her balance is lost, and he chops his sword into the shell before twisting it to break it in two. "Watch where you're spewing fire next time. You might hit someone out of the fight." He chides her before grabbing her and jumping away as the Pinks seem to have worked out their differences with each other and Black and settled on mashing his face in. He takes a few steps away from Purple and takes a defensive stance with a huge smile. "What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" Runs through his head. Then he has an idea. Axiom flies off the tri-type, but what about other things? A crackling of energy runs over his hands, then down the metal of the sword as visible blue sparks of energy. He charges. A wall of blue flame meets his charge, and he runs as much Axiom over the metal before chopping down. The sea of flame parts, and he begins running electricity through his hands again. The slight nick he gets on the first pink one causes her to seize up and gives him time to turn and impale the blade through her shell. Then the second backs her up and he has to abandon the sword or risk a concussion. He backs up further while the one in black charges around to keep pressing him. He runs energy down his arms and counters one of her swings to jangle her nerves, but before he can take advantage of it, Pink backs her up as the Pink with a sword in her shell tries to lever out the sword. But it's Apuk style, so which means it's not coming out without causing more damage. A benefit of a people that make a hobby of hunting the biggest, baddest beasts they can find. He runs Axiom through his feet and into the arena. It grabs him and he reverses his retreat into as fast a charge as he can manage. Pink and Black dodge by reflex and he races to the nearly taken out Apuk and grabs the sword she's carefully trying to angle out and pulls hard. Her shell breaks as he draws out the sword. "Pardon me, need to take out your friends now. They're not my..." He stops listening as he charges them, running electricity through the sword and his every step shaking the arena. Unfortunately, new tricks age at light speed in a fight, and the shaking doesn't so much as register to the two women. Black grabs the sword to immobilize him as Pink swoops in for the kill. So he swings off the blade and lets go to sail past Pink's head, grabbing her by the horns and swinging down as he gathers Axiom in his feet to stomp down and utterly shatter her shell. He rides his second to last opponent to the ground, and the sword he's made is pointed right in his face, a river of fire running over the metal and dripping down to consume itself before hitting the defeated opponent, who starts shuffling away. Vernon steps off her, and he and Black begin circling with her, holding the sword in his face. "You made a very dangerous toy little human," she says to him, and he grins. "We're in a fight. If I didn't make it dangerous, it would have been a waste of time." He remarks and she snorts. "How did you change the stone of the arena into a tri-tight war sword? Granted, it's a short one, but swift and strong." She asks him as they continue to pace while Vernon starts to plan out his next few moves. He needs to get her to attack first for this to work. "That would be telling," he says in a mocking tone. "I'll figure it out one way or another. Now, surrender." She commands him and he smirks. "You mean you wish to surrender to me? Very well, I accept," he remarks, and she can't help but smile at the sheer impertinence. Credit where it's due for courage. However, you have no answer to this. You have my full attention and you're out of tricks. Time meddling won't work. The sheer heat running over this blade will disrupt electrical currents, and your ground-shaking trick is already figured out. If you think that's the entire list, then the next few rounds will be very interesting for you to watch. You still think you can win? She demands. I'm about to, he says, and reaches up to flick the sword and provoke her. She takes the bait as she rushes forward to stab him with the weapon. Then he demonstrates that he's been learning too, and grabs the sword while protecting his hands with axiom and levers himself underneath her guard. His new position has his back right up against her stomach as he takes advantage of her height advantage to be utterly under her reach. He reaches back to grab the shell even as she tries to turn despite him being right up next to her, and he uses the momentum to swing onto her back, nearly impaling himself on one of the spikes before grabbing the edges of the shell and ripping out most of the metal in a single massive piece as he jumps away before the sword can be brought onto him. It damn near saves his life as the blade comes around and he uses it as a shield to block the tri-tight weapon, but the momentum still launches him away. That's the match! Vernon Shea goes on to the next round. Go Yeetus cheers as he sticks the landing. But my shell is still partially intact. I can keep going, Black screams in protest. Sorry, girl, but he's got more than half your shell in his left hand. That's a broken shell. But the sword? She asks, holding up the weapon. Only if they're brought into the arena. Making it in here is completely allowed. Also, in the oldest tournaments, it was allowed to bring weapons. Sure, that's not done anymore, but he's not broken a single rule. He wins. Don't be bitter. There's no shame in losing to a sorcerer. He's not a sorcerer, he's some off-tret thing. He doesn't have the traditions or knowledge of a sorcerer. She protests. Asterisk. The ways of the woods, most dark, allow even the meekest to leave a mighty mark. Vernon says in Cinder Tongue as he walks by before heading out of the arena.